Hey, what's up? How are you? Hope you're doing well. It is good to see all of you, and just want to welcome those of you joining us from our campuses, Ada Bible Church Online, and also want to give a special welcome to our college students. Maybe you're brand new to the Grand Rapids area or returning after a summer away, but we're just so glad that you're with us today as well. And if we haven't met, my name's Aaron. I'm a teaching pastor here, director of Lifeline, our student ministries, and it's just such a privilege to be with you, to open the scriptures today in part 3 of a series called The Power of Words. And I just want to let you know kind of what's coming up around here. Next week, I will be back wrapping up this series, and then the week after that, very excited about this, Pastor Jeff is going to be kicking off this fall series, Strength for the Journey. So hope that you're able to join us for this. I think it's going to be fantastic for our church. But for today, I want to begin our time in part 3 of The Power of Words with this guy. Anybody know who this is? Nobody. This is good. This will be like, a little history lesson. This is Norman Rockwell. And he was an American artist. He was a pretty big deal in the first part of the 20th century. His heyday was like the 30s and 40s. And he was just known for his ability to capture normal American life, like middle-class American life. And perhaps best known for 321 paintings that he did that found their way on the cover of a magazine called the Saturday Evening Post. And the Saturday Evening Post was just huge in America in the first part of the 20th century. Once a week, it would show up a magazine at your house. And those of you who are young are like, what's a magazine? I can't even, okay? It's like Apple News on paper, and it shows up at your door. I don't know what to say. Anyway, but I want to show you one of the covers that he made for the Saturday Evening Post. This is just a great picture. And let's just kind of zoom in a little bit here. It might be kind of tough to see, but there's clearly some information that's being passed from person to person. I just get the impression from the looks of surprise and glee, if I could say that, that there's some dirt being passed. Yeah, and I'm guessing that it's not about the person in each individual conversation. This series, The Power of Words, we've been talking about choosing wisdom in how we talk about ourselves and choosing wisdom in how we talk to people. And today I want to have a conversation about choosing wisdom in how we talk about other people. So we've been spending our time in the book of Proverbs in this series, and if you're new to the Bible, Proverbs is found in like the first half. Sometimes we call it the Old Testament, sometimes we call it the Hebrew Scriptures, like halfway through. And Proverbs is different than most of the books that we have in the Bible. Because most of the books, there's like some characters, there's a storyline, a narrative, and the book of Proverbs doesn't read like that. It is a collection of wise sayings that we believe were put together by King Solomon, who was a king of Israel. All these wise sayings, some of which he wrote, many that he just collected for his sons, for the royal princes of Israel, that they could learn to live and rule wisely. And out of these many proverbs, these wise sayings that Solomon collected, about 150 of them have to do with what we say, have to do with our speech. Let me give you a couple examples. Here's one. Those who guard their mouths and their tongues keep themselves from calamity. And I learned this at a young age, talking back to mom and dad, that's gonna lead to calamity. Here's another one. I love the vivid imagery here. Like a maniac shooting flaming arrows of death is one who deceives their neighbor and says, I was only kidding. It's like a couple leaves a party, and he's like, I can't believe she was so offended by my joke. And his wife's like, I can. Like a maniac shooting flaming arrows of death. And so the book of Proverbs exists for us to learn to live wisely and to speak wisely, not only in how we talk about ourselves and to other people, but back to this cover of the Saturday Evening Post, March 6, 1948. This picture is called The Gossips. And I would suggest to you that we are in desperate need of wisdom in how we talk about other people in this issue of gossip and the things that we choose to say about other people and the things that we choose to listen to other people say about other people. A conversation today about how we talk about other people, specifically gossip. Now, a question you might have in your head right now is, okay, well, what exactly are we talking about here? How do you define gossip? I mean, is it just anything that you say about somebody else when they're not around? What if it's true? What if I'm passing on something that's clearly true about somebody else? What if I'm saying something nice about somebody that's not in the room? How do you define gossip? So let's just create a little definition here. And this is not a Webster's definition. This is not even a theological definition of gossip in the Bible, but just pulling from the book of Proverbs, we read these words: the tongue has the power of life and death. The words that we use about other people carry the power of life and death. And so how do we define gossip? Well, for the purpose of this conversation, I believe that gossip is simply words that we share about another person who's not around that really carries the force of death. It's like whispering wounds. It's like speaking the death of something that matters, a relationship, a reputation, a community. This is how I want to define this word gossip. And I just think this is such an important conversation for us because the way that we talk about other people just has huge impact on our relationships, on the culture of our workplaces, the atmosphere of our schools, the health of our church and our families, our marriages, and even the condition of our very hearts. The way we talk about other people matters. And I just want to suggest to you that your words have power. You have the ability to breathe life into other people or to whisper death. And so let's have a conversation today about how we talk about other people. And just to kind of let you know where we're headed, as we explore the book of Proverbs, we're going to discover three metaphors or three images that really put on display for us the power of, the impact of how we talk about other people. And the first metaphor is firewood. Firewood. So question, do you have one of these in your backyard? Or maybe on the back deck, or maybe you went camping this summer and spent a little time around the fire pit. But I would just like to suggest to you that this is a magical place. Sitting around the campfire or the fire pit with friends or family, it's just, especially in the fall when the temperatures start to cool off, it's just a wonderful place to gather. And I would suggest that conversation around the fire is always better. I don't know if you agree, but I just think it's always better. And as you're sitting there with friends or family or whoever, there's always this moment of decision. And maybe you know what I'm talking about, where you've been sitting there talking, the conversation's been great for an hour or so, the fire's starting to die down. And you have this decision to make. Do we put another log on the fire? Because if we do, we're probably committing to sitting out here another 30 minutes, an hour. Or do we just let it die out? And if you let the fire die out, just understand that sitting around and talking in the dark, that's kind of weird, okay? Like, that's when somebody walks up and you're just sitting there in the dark talking, their first thought is, wow, these people are weird. But this is kind of the image that we get in the book of Proverbs about gossip, about talking about other people, is this image of firewood. And let me show you what I mean. It's like this, Proverbs 26, without wood, a fire goes out. And these are the collected sayings of wise King Solomon to his sons on how to live wisely. And if I'm one of Solomon's sons, I'm thinking, cool, Dad. Like, this is kind of duh. Thanks for the life advice. Well, here's the thing. These proverbs, these wise sayings, they come in two lines that we call couplets. So you can't really understand the proverb without having both lines. So here are both lines. Without wood, a fire goes out. Without a gossip, a quarrel dies down. We're not talking about fire as much as we're talking about relationships and about gossip. And I'm guessing that you've experienced this. You're in a friendship. And as happens in friendships, you run into a conflict. Somebody says something that just hurt the other person's feelings. And so now you're in a conversation at Starbucks. It goes for like an hour and a half. You're kind of working it out, explaining, this is what I meant, I'm sorry. And, it's a tough conversation, but at the end of this coffee meeting, it's like, okay, I think we're going to be all right. I think we can move forward here. And so you part ways, and everything is fine. There was a conflict, it flared up, and now it's dying down. Later that night, you run into another friend, mutual friend to both of you, who says, hey, I heard that she was really upset. I heard you guys got in a fight. And what happened was your friend, after leaving Starbucks, took some firewood and put it back on the fire, and now the conflict is flaring back up. Maybe you've been there. It's like a football coach, after practice, pulls one of his star players into his office for a conversation about team rules. He sits the kid down and he's like, look, I care about you. I want you on this team, but you got to understand everybody has to follow the team rules. And so they have a conversation about following the rules. He sends the kid home. There was a conflict. It flared up, and now it's dying down. Until after dinner, when the coach's wife says, hey, did you see what Billy posted on Facebook? So he pulls out his phone, he looks at it, and Billy just posted, sometimes coaches are the worst. I'm thinking about transferring to XYZ high school. And he took some firewood and he put it on the fire. And now this relational conflict is flaring back up. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. I'm sure that you've been there. Well, the very next proverb kind of rephrases this and adds a different aspect to it. We read, as charcoal to embers and as wood to fire, so is a quarrelsome person for kindling strife. So is a quarrelsome person, a contentious person for kindling strife. Just understand that there is a way of talking about other people when they're not in the room, when they're not around, that just kindles strife, that just adds wood to a fire. There is a way of speaking discord. There is a way of prolonging or intensifying or even creating relational conflict in the words that you say when somebody's not around. It's all like taking a piece of firewood and adding it to a fire. Now, here's the thing. This is not a theoretical conversation, is it? Because you have firewood that you're carrying around. I mean, you know things about people. You've heard things, or rumors. You have suspicions about people in your life. You may even have a job that gives you access to privileged information about certain people. You have firewood that you're carrying around with you. And what's worse is you're going to get more next week. Somebody is going to come up to you next week, I just about guarantee it, and say, hey, you know what I heard about so-and-so? And before you can say, listen, I got enough firewood that I'm carrying around, I don't need, they're just going to go into it. And all of a sudden, they're adding firewood to what you're already carrying. You already have firewood that you're carrying around, and you're going to get more next week. And so the question is, what are you going to do with it? What are you going to do with this firewood, the stuff that you know, that you've heard, the rumors, the things that you've seen, the suspicions that you have? What are you going to do with it? Are you going to add it to the fire? Prolong conflict, intensify conflict, kindle strife in other people's relationship? What are you going to do with this firewood? This is an important question. And as we think about what we're going to do with the stuff that we know and the things that we hear, it reminds me, Pastor Jeff gave us some great questions to ask ourselves when we're contemplating whether or not to say something. And he gave these to us last week, and I think these 3 questions are really helpful as we talk about the firewood. And so here are the 3 questions. Is it humble? Is it true? Is it kind? As you're thinking about what to do with this stuff that you know, is it humble? Is this really about you when you share this information? Because isn't it true that when you have information about another person, it just kind of gives you this feeling of importance or even power, that when you get to say, hey, do you know what I heard about them? It's like you know something. Is it humble? Is this really about you as you share this information? helpful question. Secondly, is it true? This firewood that you're carrying around, is it true? There's a word that we have for this, and the word is hearsay. And the idea is you hear something, and then you say something. It's like, oh, I heard that this, hey, is that true? I don't know, I'm just telling you what I heard. It's hearsay. And something I've experienced in the last little while is so much better, in my opinion. And that is, a person came up to me and said, hey, I heard you say this. And can you help me understand what you meant by that? And when this person came to me and said that, I was just like, oh, thank you for doing this. Because yeah, I did say that, but this is what I meant, and I can understand why you took it that way. But I just think it's so much more helpful when you hear something that you're just like, well, that's really interesting, or that doesn't sound right. Instead of being a hearsay and just passing it on, is that true? I don't know, just telling you what I heard. So much better, so much wiser to go to the person and say, hey, you said this. Can you help me understand what you meant by it? Second question, is it true? Third question, is it kind? Words have the power of life and death. It is possible to breathe life into another person's soul with the words that we use, even when they're not around. And it is possible to whisper wounds, to speak death into a relationship, into a reputation. So question, this firewood that you have, is it kind? Even if it's true, is it kind? So the question, what are you gonna do with the firewood that you're carrying around and the extra that you're gonna get this week? So a conversation about how we talk about other people and this word gossip. I think we would all agree gossip is bad, right? Like nobody's gonna be like, I think gossip is actually a good thing. No, gossip is a bad thing. So here's a question. Why is it so enticing? Why is it so alluring? Why is it that we're just like drawn to it? And to answer that question, we got to talk about dessert. The second image, the second metaphor from the book of Proverbs, dessert. So question for you, what's your favorite dessert? I mean, what's your go-to? If it's your birthday, what's on the menu? What's your favorite dessert? For me, for many years, it is, look at this, chocolate chip cookies. And I'm telling you, these are not just any chocolate chip cookies. These are Ma Buer cookies. That's an official name. It says it right on the recipe. And listen, I'm not saying that your mom's chocolate chip cookies are bad. I'm just saying that my mom's are better, okay? That's all I'm saying. These things are delicious. There's a secret ingredient. Maybe I'll tell you about them later, but excuse me. It's as good as I remember from childhood. Hold on a second. There's like a little extra thing that really helps. Ma Buer cookies. I gotta tell you, when I was growing up, I was so into these things, I would take 8 of them to school for lunch. I always packed my lunch. And I know what you're thinking, that is excessive. Hold on. Because I would eat 4 of them, and then I would sell 4 of them. For 25 cents a piece. And this was in the 90s. And I'm not good at math, but I think with inflation, that's something like $100 a cookie today. I was making big money off of Ma Buer cookies. But I loved these things. They're so delicious. And right about now, you might be thinking, what does this have to do with this conversation about how we talk about other people and about gossip? Well, check this out. Book of Proverbs. The words of a gossip are like choice morsels. When a person whispers, you know what I heard about her? There's something about that that's just Ma Buer cookies delicious. And that's the thing. When you ask the question, why is gossip so enticing? Why are we just drawn to it? Because it's delicious. Listen, can we just get real about something? When somebody says, do you want to hear what I heard about them? They might as well be taking a freshly baked batch of Ma Buer cookies and just passing them underneath my nose because it's practically irresistible. So don't tell me that when somebody says, do you want to know what I heard about her, that you just go, that's just kind of uninteresting to me, just rather boring, and I would rather not know about. I mean, come on. Gossip is delicious, and don't leave me alone with this. I mean, would you agree with me? This is why it's so enticing. This is why it's so alluring, because it is delicious. There's this something about us as fallen and flawed human beings living in a broken world that's just drawn to it. And I think we just have to be honest that this is never gonna get easy. I just really struggle to believe that someday down the road, you and I will just say, gossip is just completely boring, not interested, and I'm just, not drawn to it at all. I just think it's part of being a flawed human being because it's delicious. It's like Ma Buer cookies. And so maybe gossip kind of is like dessert in the sense that one or two Ma Buer cookies every once in a while. I mean, it's not Whole 30, but it's not that bad, right? It's pretty normal. And maybe that's how gossip is. A little bit here and there. Everybody else is doing it. It's normal. Maybe it's not that bad. But as we've already said, these proverbs, they come in two lines like a couplet, and you need both lines to understand what's going on. So here we go. The words of a gossip are like choice morsels. They go down to the inmost parts. This is not a proverb about our digestive system. It's talking about the impact of gossip when you take it in. And in the ancient Hebrew mindset, the inmost parts, that's talking about that deepest part of you where your thoughts, your feelings, your motivations, where they come from and where they live. And in the Hebrew mindset, it was actually your guts. And for us, Western mindset, we would probably say that gossip is like choice morsels that sink down into our hearts. That's probably how we would put it. Sinks down into our hearts and puts down roots there. But the idea is gossip, yes, it's delicious, but understand that when you choose to take it in and swallow it, it's gonna sink down into your heart, it's gonna put down roots, and understand there are consequences to that. You see, there are consequences in our lives to speaking gossip, and there are consequences when we choose to take it in, when we choose to listen to it. And the reality is that I believe that gossip pollutes. Gossip pollutes our hearts. I mean, think about it. When you listen to the words of another person gossiping about somebody that you know, your opinion about that person becomes polluted. I mean, there are some things that you can't unhear, whether they're true or not. And so your opinions, your feelings about other people become polluted. But I think it's worse than that because gossip pollutes our very hearts. Our hearts, that is where our thoughts, our feelings, our motives, this is where they live. And to let gossip in there, it just pollutes. I believe that gossip has an addictive quality to it. It's like once you start listening to it, you kind of want more and you become addicted to it, and it has an impact on our hearts. And, Jesus had something to say about this in the Gospel of Luke. He said, a good man or a good person brings good things out of the good stored in his heart. And an evil man brings evil things out of the evil stored in his heart. He's talking about the heart like it's a storehouse for a farm or a treasury. For the mouth speaks what the heart is full of. Understand, the words that you speak, it comes from what's in your heart. And if you're putting gossip into your heart, if you're polluting your heart, your words, your thoughts, your feelings, your actions, they really only have one source, and it is your heart. And so the book of Proverbs is trying to teach us wisdom and how we speak and how we listen and how we live. And there's this warning here. It's like, hey, if you choose to listen to these words, It's going to sink down in your heart. It's going to pollute your heart, and there's going to be impact in your life. And so a question maybe to wrestle with today is there somebody, some place, some social gathering that maybe you need to avoid? Just the way that people are talked about in those environments? Maybe there's a website or a news source that you just need to cut off. Maybe there's a conversation that needs to happen with you and a group of friends that's just like, hey, it seems like when we get together, the conversation just slides into this conversation about other people, and I would really like to change that. Or I know a bunch of you are headed back to school this week or started back to school last week, and here at the beginning of the year is an opportunity to do things differently than last year. And the same might be true for parents as we engage in those parent group chats again, the line waiting to pick up kids from school, an opportunity to do things differently, because the way that we speak about others and the way that we choose to listen to others speak about, it has an impact in our lives. This is important. It's a conversation that matters. So again, here we are. Gossip. It's not good. It's destructive for the people around us. It's destructive for us as well. So why do we continue to fall into it? Why do we continue to do it? The answer is because it works. Because it's effective. It's time to talk about the third metaphor in the book of Proverbs, traps. Traps. I'm wondering if you've ever had to use one of these. Mousetrap. Now, I sincerely hope you've never had to use one this big. Because if you have mice in your house that are this big, recommendation, condemn the house, move away. This is too much, okay? But these things work. A few years ago, we had an issue with mice. I think it was in the garage or something, and I tried to use those nice traps, you know what I mean? Where it's like this little house, and you put some cheese in there, a mouse goes in there, a door shuts, and then you take them away, and it's like a Free Willy situation. You let them out of the woods. It doesn't work. That's what I learned. Does not work. I don't know, but this thing, it works. These things are effective. They will trap a mouse, and I think the same is true. The same is true with gossip. Gossip works. You can set a trap for another person for your own benefit, and it's effective. Gossip works when you need to take revenge. Longtime friend shares something about you that you trusted to them, shared it around with other people. The thing about friendship is they know things about you, but you also know things about them. You can share personal information about them through gossip. Gossip's effective. It works if you want to take revenge. Gossip works at getting you what you want. It's effective in that way. Everybody at the office knows that when it comes to this promotion, it's either going to be you or it's going to be him. And there are things that you can say, rumors that you can spread, information that you can share with the right people at the right time that will make it more likely that you get promoted. Gossip is effective. It works at getting you what you want. And gossip works at making yourself feel better. Now, you're not going to believe this, but in middle school, I was not very cool. I know, shock. I saw somebody actually gasp. Middle school was a tough season for me. People made fun of me, told stories about me, true and untrue, behind my back. And it was a painful season. But I learned something in middle school. And that is that I can play that game too, and I can play it pretty well. Because I'm a communicator. I can tell stories. I can be funny. And so I discovered in middle school that what people were doing to me, I could do that to other people. I could tell stories about that kid over there and make something up about this person over here and make people laugh, and it made me feel better about myself. for a while. Gossip, like traps, it's effective. It works. But the thing about these traps, like I said, this is not the catch and release program. When you set a mouse trap like this, I'm really kind of scared right now. It's lethal. It kills. And the same is true with the traps that we set with our words. They can be lethal. And when you choose to take revenge on your friend by spreading gossip in the same way that they did, instead of going to your friend and saying, hey, I heard that you said this, help me understand what's going on. When you choose to take revenge, that can be lethal to that friendship. It's going to be hard to rebuild that friendship after taking revenge. And when you choose to manipulate the situation at the office by sharing information and stories and rumors, that's lethal. That person that you're competing with, they have a career. They have a family that they're trying to provide for. When you use your words like that, something dies. And to my discredit and shame, when I chose to play the game in middle school and make fun of other people and share stories about other people for my benefit, it cost them something. It cost them emotional pain, ridicule. These traps that we set, they're lethal. Something dies. Words have the power of life, and they have the power of death. And there's something else as well, because when you set traps like this, there are often unintended consequences. There's often collateral damage, and sometimes that collateral damage includes us. And so back to the book of Proverbs, the mouths of fools are their undoing, and their lips are a snare to their very lives. The idea is you set the trap for them, and you're the one that gets snared. Another proverb, a little bit later, chapter 26, if you set a trap for others, you will get caught in it yourself. And if you roll a boulder down on others, it will crush you instead. Understand that there are often unforeseen consequences, collateral damage that often includes us. When you use your words to take revenge on a friend that said something about you, it doesn't just cost that friend, it costs you as well as you lose a treasured friendship that's going to be tough to rebuild. And when you use your words to manipulate the situation at the office, people know what you're doing. People aren't dumb. People see it. And the collateral damage in a situation like that is your own reputation, your own character. And yes, it might get you that promotion, but that's probably the end of the road because everybody sees your character. What I'm trying to say is there is collateral damage when we choose to use our words like this. And the book of Proverbs exists to teach us wisdom. This is how you live wisely. This is not a wise way to live. You end up snaring yourself. Which brings us back to this painting, Norman Rockwell, on March 6, 1948, appeared on the cover of the Saturday Evening Post. There's a story behind this painting. It turns out that these people that are pictured here, they're not fictional characters. These are all real people in Norman Rockwell's hometown of Arlington, Vermont. In fact, this woman right here, we'll zoom in on her, this is one of his neighbors, or was one of his neighbors. And what happened is she knew something, she heard something about Mr. Rockwell, and I don't know what her motivation was, maybe just the feeling of importance of knowing something, having some dirt on a famous artist or what, but she began to spread that information around. And then back to the full picture, I mean, the image of firewood, they each just put that wood on the fire and it passed along through the whole town. Now, this person down here in the bottom right, that's Norman Rockwell himself. He painted himself into the picture, and you get the idea. Here he's shocked at what he's hearing, and now we're full circle. He's yelling at the woman who started the rumor, who shared the gossip. So what we learn from this painting is that when you're a famous artist, you can take your revenge in a very public way. And in front of millions of people. And it's kind of funny, but the truth is this woman and Norman Rockwell, they never spoke again. Broke the relationship. She was mortified. And so I think for both of them, there were unforeseen consequences. There was collateral damage that happened. And then I think about this community, this small town community, and all these different people that are pictured and their involvement. I wonder how this incident impacted their community and their relationships and trust in this town. And so it's a fascinating story. It's a good picture of how gossip works. And I think we would all agree that these things happen, and unfortunately, it's kind of normal. We experience this in our schools, in our workplaces, sometimes even in our families, in our neighborhoods. These things happen. But I think we have an opportunity to do something different because of Jesus and what Jesus did for us. And the fact that we have the Spirit of God living inside of us, the fact that Jesus breathed life into each of us, I think we have an opportunity to be a different kind of community. We don't have to be like that. We don't have to be normal. We don't have to be like everybody else. In fact, my hope and my prayer for this community, for this church, is that when somebody walks into our church, or a couple joins one of our small groups, or a student joins our Lifeline student ministry, that they would experience a breath of life in the way that they hear people talking about others. And my hope and my prayer for this community is that as we go out into our places of work, in our schools, into our neighborhoods, and our homes, that we would be the kind of people that breathe life into the weary souls of others. That we breathe life into relationships and communities because of what Jesus has done for us and how he's breathed life into our souls. We have an opportunity to be a different kind of community because of the impact of Jesus in our lives. And that is my encouragement. That is my challenge for you today. I'd love to pray for you as we close our time, and then I want to invite our campus pastors and room hosts to come up. They're going to say a few words and then dismiss us. God, I'm just grateful for today. The opportunity to gather, to be in the company of each other, this community that you have created to represent you on this planet. God, what a privilege and what a responsibility. God, you have charged us to treat each other as you would treat us, and to treat those who are outside of this community as you would. And so, God, would you empower us to use our words to breathe life into others? God, we don't want to be people that speak death to others, about others. God, empower us to be the kind of people that you're calling us to be. God, we're just grateful. We love you, and we pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen.